Last year, we told you the story of a man who managed to destroy the bank he ran because of a pig butchering scam he'd fallen for, and he ended up in prison. You might be tempted to think that these scams are run by scheming people in homes filled with treasures from their ill-gotten gains. Well, as always, the truth is stranger and often more terrifying than fiction. This week, we're looking into the scam centres that fuel these pig butchering scams and the scam victims who staff them. That's this week on the podcast that keeps you safe from scams, hacks, and frauds. We're going to start this episode with the story of Zhang Hongliang. During the COVID-19 pandemic, like many others in the restaurant industry, he lost his job and took work wherever he could find it, even if it took him out of the country. Travelling between Laos and Thailand, he met a man named Gao. Gao told Zhang that he was a broker for Chinese workers in Thailand and he had an amazing opportunity for him. He was in the process of opening a restaurant in Myanmar and needed a Chinese chef to train his local chef. Now, if you've not heard of Myanmar, you might know it by another name, Burma. And if you've heard of either Myanmar or Burma, you probably know it for the civil wars and genocides and all sorts of atrocities. And Zhang had heard of these too. But Gao reassured him that he wouldn't be doing anything illegal and that there were a lot of customers in the part of Myanmar where his restaurant is. Myawaddy, because there are lots of scam call centres being run, so lots of hungry customers. When he arrived in Myawaddy, there was no restaurant job. There were, however, scam call centres and he was being forced to work in one, trying to get other people to part with their life savings through pig butchering scams. Now, when we say a scam call centre, you might be thinking of some rundown warehouse trying to keep a low profile. But you couldn't be more wrong. We are talking about huge complexes connected to the internet via satellite services such as Starlink, which they'll need not just for all the phones that they're using to send nefarious messages, but also for full video studios with backgrounds showing banks, police, and other organisations. So if you have any doubts about any stage of the scam, they can get you to jump on a video call that looks absolutely real. But the conditions aren't so great for the victims forced to work there. Quarters are prison-like, beatings are common, and in one case, a man who jumped from a building to escape was dragged back in, and his family was extorted for money before getting him healthcare. In Zhang's case, he first tried to buy his way out. After pleading with the kidnappers and saying he had a family emergency, his family scraped up $5,500. He then slipped away one night, swam the river between Myanmar and Thailand, and turned himself into the Thai police. They, in turn, contacted his country's embassy and sent him home. Now, you might be thinking the solution is simple. If you don't go to Myanmar, you can't get swept up into these call centres. And that's certainly good advice. Both the UK and US governments advise against all travel to Myanmar, usually for reasons much more serious than scam call centres. But we're now going to introduce another victim of these scams, Wang Qiang. Wang did not travel to Myanmar. Well, willingly at least. Wang is an actor in China. At the start of this story, he wasn't exactly a household name, even in China. But he'd had enough success to be able to make a living appearing in Chinese dramas and the like. He flew to Bangkok after being hired by a Thai media company. He didn't think much of it as he'd been to Thailand for work before. His girlfriend, who is also in the media, Jai Jai, was tracking his location. From Bangkok, he was taken to the border city of Mae Sot and forced at gunpoint over the border. There he was taken to the Apollo Business Centre and forced to work for the scammers. I don't know about you, but I was shocked to hear that scams have reached the point that they're taking over not just buildings, but entire business centres and cities. So I thought I'd better talk to an expert. Robert Siciliano is a cybersecurity expert and creator of the Strategic Human Firewall, and he's talked to people who have worked in these centres. Thanks for joining us, Robert.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So, Robert, we've talked in this episode about an actor and a chef who's been swept up in these centres. What sort of job opportunities do these scammers use to entice people into their grasp?
It's a pretty simple job application. Like when most of us go online seeking a job, we go to certain sites that have lists and lists of job opportunities based on our expertise. So one of them might be call center activities. One could be administration, virtual assistant. And when they apply for these jobs, usually there's a bonus involved, a sign-on bonus. Sometimes they will say they'll pay for airfare, hotel. They'll offer housing, even meals. So really, the jobs are really enticing that most young people are seeking out right now.
So, exactly how big are these centres?
We've seen centers as much as 100 acres that might house as many as 2,000 or 3,000 people. And a portion of those people are actually armed guards. They are the organized criminals themselves, orchestrating those 2,000 people who are often victims of human trafficking. These are slave labor that got the job, and when they were picked up at the airport, their passports were confiscated and they're being held against their will.
It's really shocking. The stories that I've covered, these ones were just in Myanmar. Are they in other countries as well?
Right now, it looks as if there are victims of human trafficking from as many as 80 different countries. And the scam centers, they say, are worldwide. They don't have a full handle on exactly where every one of them are, but it looks like they are on almost every continent, with the exception, of course, of Antarctica.
So what is life like for people in these call centers?
They're working at least 18 hours a day. And if they don't meet their quota, meaning if they're not making a certain amount of dollars per day, they're often beaten and tortured.
That's grim. Exactly how many people are being held captive in these places?
The UN does their research, and based on the reports that I've seen, anywhere between 250,000 and 350,000 are victims of human trafficking. These are people that are being held against their will, and they don't really have much say in the matter. And if they don't make those quotas, they're in dire straits.
Now, the scams that the people in the stories that we've covered today were called pig butchering scams. What is a pig butchering scam?
It's an interesting terminology. The idea behind, butchering an actual pig means shortly before that pig is taken out for slaughter, it's fattened up, right? They fatten up the pig, they feed it as much as possible. That way they can get as much money as possible for it upon slaughter. They fatten it up. And pig butchering in regards to the scam itself is just that. It's fattening up the human, so to speak. It's getting them to invest so much money and keep investing and keep investing. And eventually, once they've exhausted all of their funds, that's when they're essentially slaughtered, so to speak. That's when the scammers essentially run with every dime they have.
It says a lot about what they think about us. They call it pig butchering, doesn't it?
The scammers themselves are what most would consider sociopaths and psychopaths. These are the hardcore narcissists amongst us, those that have zero empathy, sympathy, guilt, or remorse. These are people that truly have no shame. They are the human predators that live amongst us in society. When you do the research in regards to sociopaths and psychopaths, studies show that as many as 3% of women and as much as 6% of men possess these traits. That's a lot of people worldwide. And they are the ones that are running the show at these organized crime rings.
So why don't the governments where these are located do something about that?
Well, depending on the country, will depend on whether or not the government is actually doing something or not. In some countries, the governments benefit directly from the fraud. They, in their countries, say Cambodia, for example, many government agents are in on it and they are being paid to look the other way. So in some countries like, bordering China or even in China, the Chinese government doesn't generally look favorably on these type of scam operations going on within their borders. But where their citizens are being exploited and again used for human trafficking, that's often when the Chinese would step in and shut those operations down. So some countries benefit from it, some countries don't, and the ones that don't look at it as exploitation, clamping down.
So, can you give us one free or cheap thing that we can all do today to help protect ourselves from these pig butchering scams?
Easy enough. Every time we get a wrong number text message, really every time we receive an email for that matter, I think it's important that we look at every inbound communication and determine, okay, what is the motivation of this inbound communication? Is the person on the other end reputable? Or do they mean to do me harm? Is there any manufactured urgency here? And truly becoming what I call a strategic human firewall, somebody who recognizes risk, is seeking out the deception in any inbound communication, is somebody who essentially and effectively is able to avoid that risk. Once you recognize it, you're able to avoid it, and therefore you're much more safe and secure.
That artificial urgency, that is a really good thing to look out for, because that just won't help you keep protected from scams. But you see salespeople use that as well.
Most sales techniques are a form of manipulation or negotiation, but that manipulation plays a big role. And while general sales is a form of, I guess, ethical manipulation, scamming crosses that line all the time.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much for being with us today, Robert.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And if you'd like to talk to Robert about how to better protect your business from cyber threats, you'll find more about him at protectnowllc.com. I wanted to end the show with a bit of positive news. So I'll tell you how Yang Qiang's case turned out. He was fortunate that Jai Jai could make some noise on his behalf. She initially reported this to her local police, who didn't do much. So she went to social media. Now, China's relationship with social media is complicated. You might remember a few years back, China banned memes featuring Winnie the Pooh because they were said to resemble the Chinese president. And you can't mention all a certain event that may or may not have happened in 1989. But even with that level of control, sometimes movements break through. And sometimes they cause just enough shame that rather than crack down and pretend something doesn't exist, they take action. They leaned on the Thai government, which in turn orchestrated a raid to get him and thousands of other victims out of the Apollo Business Center. The Thai government seemingly already knew where it was and what happened there, as it took less than 24 hours to plan and execute this raid and parade him on Thai media, broadcasting his thanks and assurances that Thailand is safe to the entire world. And Wang hasn't disappeared since his rescue. He and Jai Jai are still very prominent on Chinese state media, and he's even won Weibo's Most Influential Person of the Year award, Weibo being a social media site in China. So what I want you to take from all of this is that each of us has power. Each of us can do something today to make things harder for scammers and fraudsters, and it costs you nothing. And that sums up why I made the show. We all need to be talking about scams. Share this story with those you care about and email politicians demanding better protection from scammers. The more we talk about this, the less shameful it becomes to be a victim and the more aware and prepared we all are. I've been C, and this has been Scams, Hacks and Frauds. Please subscribe. We're on all podcast apps. You'll also find us at www.scamshacksandfrauds.com. Scams, Hacks and Frauds is available for free under the Creative Commons with Attribution Share-alike license. If you are reusing our content, the music cannot be reused under this license. You can find more information and our previous shows, along with all transcripts, at www.scamshacksandfrauds.com.